West Hill United is a progressive spiritual community where how you live is more important than what you believe. West Hill United is a people, a place, an idea. We are a community living out of a progressive faith, striving to make a positive difference in our own lives, the lives of others, and the world. Join us Sundays at 10:30 a.m. or connect with us at any time.
Good morning to everyone to our West Hill gathering today. My name is Florence Salkinaki, and I am coming to you from my home in Scarborough, Ontario, close to the church. And we have a beautiful, as far as I'm concerned, a lovely, lovely fall day today with sunshine and a little cooler temperatures, and it's just gorgeous. So I'm really happy we're into fall now. West Hill United is located in Treaty 20 in the area of the Williams Treaties of 1923. These are the lands of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation and were previously occupied by the Seneca and Huron-Wendat First Nations. There are over 600 First Nations in Canada that represent more than 50 distinct Indigenous languages across our country. Many of us are continuing to learn about the enormous contributions Indigenous people have made to our lives and the value and wisdom in the First Nations teaching of the seven grandfathers. Children are taught to practice living their lives with wisdom, love, respect, bravery, honesty, humility, and truth. Values that enable people to live in a way that promotes harmony and balance with everyone and everything in creation. We invite you to visit the website of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, where you'll find a rich history of their people and their present-day activities. The reading today is an extract from Franklin Covey's The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, and it's a summary of Habit 6, Synergize. To put it simply, synergy means two heads are better than one. Synergize is the habit of creative cooperation. It is teamwork, open-mindedness, and the adventure of finding new solutions to old problems. But it doesn't happen on its own. It's a process. And through that process, people bring all their personal experience and expertise to the table. Together, they can produce far better results than they could individually. Synergy lets us discover jointly things we are much less likely to discover by ourselves. It is the idea that the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. 1 + 1 = 3 or 6 or 60, you name it. When people begin to interact together genuinely and they're open to each other's influence, they begin to add new insight. And again, this is Franklin Covey's summary of Stephen R. Covey's Habit 6, Synergize, offered as wisdom for the journey.
May we walk in its light.
Hello, West Hill. My name is Aaron Sheedy, and I've been asked to kick off our community wisdom section for today's perspective. Through the summer, we've been having several deep dives into what is wisdom, and that's been our summer themes. Thank you. And I understand we're going into hope, which is also exciting. I'll move that up a little bit. Okay. Uh-oh. Who's in charge? So, what we're doing today is we're going to have guest speakers from our community talking about what community wisdom means to them and their experiences with it. So I'm starting with an example of the so-called podcast that I started to make and how that translated into community wisdom. If you haven't heard it, there's a very recent version set up for it. But I want to tell you a little bit about the story on how it got to this version. One of my jobs here at West Hill is I'm the communications director, and I've self-assigned myself as West Hill storyteller. So I'm always seeking ways to try to figure out how do I explain 1 + 1 = 3. Because we're not a building, we're not a Zoom room, we're not just a bunch of people. We are something ethereal. There's something between us. There's something that makes us West Hill. And I've been trying to figure out what that is. And one of the most poignant pieces I found was when I read, I think it was Greta who first said it, at West Hill, we're falling in love with being together. And that was my trigger. That was, okay, how do I tell the story of a group of people who are falling in love together? So we have, like today even, we've seen so many different examples of that. We have people telling their home stories. We have the bazaar coming up. We have weddings. We have funerals. We have kids going to college. All that's going on. That's all part of the story. But I don't know how to tell that story. And then I read a Christian description of the Christian God and how the Trinity is actually, like one of the theories was, the Trinity is actually so God can fall in love with themselves. And okay, that's amazing, right? So you have these entities that are actually loving each other. But what if that was ourselves? What if that was ourselves? How could I tell a story where people were able to fall in love with themselves while falling in love with others at the same time around a space? So I put together a podcast, and I put it out to select people within this community because it was rooted in West Hill values. And I got, I would say, encouraging but confusing feedback from people. People are like, this is okay, this is interesting, I don't know what to think about it. And then finally Dan said, I don't understand it. And then I got those same feedbacks from other people, and I got great feedback on how to make it better. So when I was building this podcast, and one of the best pieces of advice I got was don't call it a podcast, it's actually a radio play more than a podcast. When you're building this podcast, and then the more people, the more twigs that I added to it, the stronger it got. So I added more voices, I added direct quotes right from VisionWorks, and I added more input, and then it became more and more clear and became much easier, I think, for the audience to understand. So we would like to play that for you. It's on Spotify if you want to follow along afterwards. Just look up Stories Told on Spotify. You should be able to find it, or email me, I'll send you the link. But we're going to play the first episodes, all of 8 minutes right now, and then as a way of welcoming everybody to the room, I'm going to front load this just a little tiny bit, that in case you miss it, the whole coming together in a space that's kind of a little bit mystical and a little bit reality is us, right? It's us. So I hope you enjoy. If you brought fruit, feel free to throw it later.
Hello, everybody, again. I just want to share a little bit of the background of that. When I first heard that episode and some following episodes, as Aaron talks about, it talks about VisionWorks and the values of our community. And those different characters, I saw the different things that they brought to the table, the different wisdom that they shared. And so as we got into this Sunday, I thought, this would be a good way to kind of introduce it, a little bit of a different way to get our imagination flowing a little bit. And so from here, we're going to have different people share about different things that have stood out to them from our past series, or just different nuggets of wisdom that have helped them throughout their life. And this morning, they are going to, in the term that Aaron used, they're going to bring this wisdom to the lot this morning. So, Fred, with that said, we turn to you. Very far away from us, and it's amazing that this technology brings us together, and that you can be a part of the lot here, Fred. So yeah, we'll turn to Fred at this part.
Yes, thank you, Joe. Yes, thank you, Aaron, and Mike. Thank you very much. Speaking with Mike this last week has been very, very interesting for me. Now, I have been able to gain a lot from finding time to speak with Mike oftentimes during the working week. So I gain a lot from that. I want to thank you very much. And to Aaron and to Scott, you'll be wonderful people all along. There is summer series which encompass humility, empathy, reflection, and openness that Joe has initiated for us at West Hill over this couple of weeks. I've been able to gain quite a lot from this series. I've come to realize that wisdom is more than intelligence or knowledge. That wisdom is the ability to apply understanding with sound judgment in everything we do. It's about compassion. It's about clarity of purpose in everything that we set out to achieve. Again, I have come to understand that wisdom often grows out of experience, and certain attitudes that we embrace tend to accelerate its development. And these attitudes, including humility, empathy, reflection, and openness, are essential for one to gain operative wisdom, because these elements constitute a bedrock for one to be able to apply wisdom in everything they do. Again, I have come to an understanding in the course of this series that humility is the foundation of learning. I was on the campus of the University of Abuja last time I spoke with Mike, and I had to show Mike the IT building behind me where I was speaking with him. So, as an environment for learning, I've come to understand that for one to gain sound learning, humility has to be incorporated. One demonstrates humility when they have come to recognize that they do not know everything. It's not everything that one is able to capture for the first time. So it takes humility and hard work for one to be able to grasp and get a handle on the things they're trying to do. And this attitude, that is, humility as an attitude, tends to open a door to learning and allows one to admit when one is wrong and to listen to others. I mean, just like the Greek philosopher Socrates would say, true wisdom comes to each of us when we have come to realize how little we understand about life. For empathy, getting to understand this from our summer series has led me to compassionate decision making, especially when it comes to dealing with people around my office and around my neighborhood. Getting to have a deeper human connection. As a result of learning I have gained from this series, I'm now able to literally see through other person's eyes. I'm now able to understand and to share in the frame of mind of others I come across. I'm now able to step outside of my own perspective and be able to gain insight into the complexities of human behavior and social situations. Then, having come to understand what reflection is, it has enabled me to pursue those things that are noble, and sometimes to pause to examine my thoughts, my actions, and the objective which I hold in high value, and what outcomes I look to gaining out of things I set out to do. Reflection has helped me to draw lessons from my failures and from my success and from things that I've been able to achieve and things I look forward to getting to achieve in the future. And it has enabled me to prevent repeated mistakes so that those things which I was unable to achieve in the past, those things I had not done well in the past, by indulging in reflections, I've been able to amend for all of these. It has really benefited me due to what I gained during this summer series. Also, through reflection isometrics, I have been able to learn from experience. I've also been able to transform knowledge gain into personal wisdom. Then, for the openness element from this series, I have been able to come to the realization, I've come to understand better how openness tends to propel people to greatness. I've been able to gain that one tends to demonstrate openness when one provides consideration to different viewpoints, to different opinions, to different cultures, being able to be being able to get to understand all of this culture, being able to get to understand other people's experiences, and becoming very receptive to new ideas, constantly involving and embracing the growth attitude in order for one to be able to improve on themselves. This is what openness for me has provided. It has enabled me to guard against the false assumptions you see across the globe about events on the one side, about events on the other side. Openness tends to enable one to have a wider perspective about global events. It tends to prevent preconceived opinions that are not based on verifiable evidence. And with openness, one is able to understand, one is able to see, one is able to appreciate what the other party is trying to do because it's an open situation. You can get to see what is truth, what is not truth, what is derived, and what is the actuality in every situation. All of these have assisted me from openness to reflection to empathy to humility. Having followed this series to this point, it has provided me with the knowledge and understanding I'm now able to apply in my everyday life. This is what I have to share this morning. Thank you.
Fred, thank you for the wisdom that you bring to, and the words of the podcast that you bring to the lot. We are really appreciative that for your words. We'll turn to Dave at this point.
Good morning. I am not the only Dave B in the congregation. I see there's a Dave Bergerson. So we're going to have to specify a little more clearly. When I was 6, I was sent to my grandmother's house while my sister was being hatched. Sorry, that's a family in joke. And my grandmother frequently said to me, if at first you don't succeed, try again. It didn't mean much to me at first, but now I realize how much she was right about persistence. Our topic of wisdom has been very complex and a great deal to take in. One thing that struck me, although I didn't see it in my early life, was this idea of persistence. As a lab scientist dealing with pharmaceuticals, more often than not, an experiment would not reach the conclusion that was hoped for. And so 17 of us had to climb back into the trenches, redesign, and keep trying after modification, and a lot of luck. Persistence was the answer, even though it meant 100 sample tubes and 100 analyses for every variation. Students are deserving of persistence as well. Students infrequently would come to my office totally miffed about a lecture which had been given. They didn't get the message, despite my having received several teaching awards during my days. Surely I hadn't given a dud of a lecture. Students would come sometimes even with a tear in their eye. This would result in presenting the same material to them in different ways, often 5 and 6 different approaches until they understood. Graduates have actually come back to me in years later and thanked me for repeating the material to them. Then again, cardiac drugs and steroids are not the easiest thing to understand. In 1987, my wife was killed by a truck in an accident, and I was left to bring up a 10-year-old. I have never been so tired in my life, at least until now, when I'm in my 80s. But doing a job, housework, repairs, meals, keeping tabs on a blooming teenager, while not being too restrictive, required me to persist, regardless of how tired I was. How other single parents do it absolutely amazes me. I probably had enough money. I could have had someone clean, someone do the laundry, and someone to prepare meals, but that wasn't a good situation for my son. And I think that's not what my wife would have wanted. Luckily, my wife had instilled manners, concern for others, and some social graces in him. This persistence paid off. Aside from making our beds and clearing the table and those everyday jobs, we cleaned house together on Saturday mornings, flipping for who would receive what jobs. And when he became hot under the collar, we sat down and chatted about it. The persistence again paid off. I couldn't convince him to study pharmaceutical sciences, though. He opted instead for electrical engineering at the microelectronic level. My son has turned out to be a much better father than I had. We phone every week for at least an hour because he lives in BC. Sorry, I had a pause there. In any case, last week he had his 20th wedding anniversary, and he's about to turn 50. In summary, persistence no matter how difficult, was a bit of wisdom that paid off handsomely. Let me close with a stanza from a poem by Dag Hammarskjöld, the second Secretary General of the United Nations. A man who was almost overcome by his persistence. Hammarskjöld was always torn whether he was doing enough for world peace, and so kept a diary from which this poem comes. It is in a book which is called Markings. Tired and lonely, so tired the heart aches. Meltwater trickles down the rocks. The fingers are numb, the knees tremble. It is now that you must not give in. Thank you.
Dave, thank you for the wisdom that you bring our community and for the story of persistence that you shared, or the story of perseverance. We appreciate that. At this time, we are going to turn to John Finley.
Thank you. We started today. Florence referred to the 7 grandfathers and named them. I think many of us have an awareness of the concept of the 7 grandfathers as being principles for living, learning, and teaching. One of the 7 grandfathers is wisdom. The indigenous folks do a really marvelous job of putting their thoughts together with all of nature. So for them, in the teachings, the beaver represents wisdom because he uses his natural gift wisely for his survival. The beaver also alters his environment, his surroundings, in an environmentally friendly and sustainable way for the benefit of his family. To cherish knowledge is to know wisdom. Use your inherent gifts wisely and live your life by them. Recognize your differences and those of others in a kind and respectful way. Continuously observe the life of all things around you. Listen with clarity and a sound mind. Respect your own limitations and those of all your surroundings. Allow yourself to learn and live by your wisdom.
Thank you for sharing that, John. At this time, I'm going to read something that Ann Jackson had sent in and asked to be read, and then we're going to turn to Donna as she's going to share something that's been meaningful to her. So Ann Jackson wrote, "My father-in-law, Bob Jackson, was an insightful engineer who knew more science than the average bear. He was also a very shy man who listened more than he spoke. One night about 40 years ago around the campfire, I remember him saying, 'The more I know I don't know.'" I like the humility that Bob expressed with these words, Anne writes. He also respected that everyone can teach us things. Bill Nye shared this view when he said, "Everyone you will ever meet knows something that you don't." For me, a key to wisdom is improving the ability to have good conversations. If we enter every conversation assuming that we have something to learn, no matter who it is that we are speaking with, we will be more open to listening and learning. And continues writing, "I enjoyed West Hill's review of Celeste Headley's TED Talk, giving practical ways to have better conversations. She quoted M. Scott Peck, who said true listening requires the setting aside of oneself, as well as Stephen Covey, who said listen with the intent to understand instead of the intent to reply. These teachings are helping me strive for more meaningful dialogue with all people, including family and friends. I've learned that it is not as easy as it sounds and requires much awareness and practice. I now understand that the more I keep my mouth closed, the better the conversation, the greater my understanding, and more compassionate person I can be. I miss those campfire chats with Bob. Words from Ann Jackson. At this time, we'll turn to Donna as she will close our conversation today, our dialogue, the different words of wisdom that people have from the lot. Thank you, Donna.
Thanks, Joe. Really appreciate that. Pardon me if I stare at my phone. I've got it all written out here. The joy of electronics these days, right? I have a confession to make in this moment. When standing in front of a group of people vulnerable to the information you hold and not yet given, there is a time of reflection that creates a moment of imposter syndrome. This is my moment. As I continue to reflect, I realize that standing up despite this feeling is wisdom. I also like to believe that the universe sometimes brings to you what you need to stand, and that is this book.
Thank you this morning to everybody who shared for the wisdom and the light that you brought us. And then just to the lot in general, to everybody, every time that you come and you share, you participate, you have discussion with one another. That's bringing wisdom and that's bringing light. So I thank you. And really, to those even before us who've helped bring West Hill to where it is today. I am so fortunate that I get to be a part of things and the wisdom that's brought me in my life. So I thank you for that.
Become a sustaining champion of West Hill United's work by committing to an automatic monthly donation. Learn more or donate now through Canada Helps.